Hey, what's up everybody? In this video, I'm going to review Charm Flower Aurora from the Sleeping Beauty series. And this Tsum is actually a pretty good Tsum, so stay tuned. I'm going to get into what she's really good for. But first, let's take a look at her ability description. So Flower Aurora is going to make magical bubbles appear at random. And the drop rates for this Tsum is going to be exactly the same as Flower Snow White. So for me, it was at 36.36%. I do have all the other Tsums maxed out, but it is going to be pretty difficult to get one of these Tsums. So hopefully you're going to be able to get one of them. She is going to be a Charm Tsum, which means that she's going to be a lot easier to use. And if you don't know already, Charm Tsums essentially will have a charm that could be connected with the actual Tsum itself. So in this case, Flower Aurora will have a charm of a flower petal, which is also pink, and you could connect the flower petals with the Charm Flower Aurora as well. So that's how Charm Tsums work. And before I get into the stats, if you haven't subscribed yet to this channel and would like to see more Tsum Tsum content just like this, where I review Tsums, do monthly leaks, do pickup capsule reviews, or selection box reviews, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Your subscription really helps me out a lot. Alright, so let's take a look at her stats. In order for you to activate her ability, you're going to need to clear a total of 19 copies of her off the screen. This also includes the flower petals as well, so you could get either 19 copies of Flower Aurora or the charm, or a combination of both. Her minimum score is 80 with a maximum score of 1060. So the score wise is not that amazing off the bat, but combining it with her ability, she's actually really good for score. So I'll show you the results at the end of this video here. If you want to max her out to skill level 6, you're going to need to get a total of 32 copies of her, which is pretty reasonable, especially for a Charm Tsum. So this is a good option if you need a Tsum that's good for score and you want to get her to skill level 6. Okay, so let's take a look at the skill chart. So for Flower Aurora, it's pretty simple. There's only one thing that changes, and that's the number of magic bubbles that will appear during the animation. So if you have her at skill level 1, then you're only going to get 2, and it's always guaranteed 2. But as you level her up, you're guaranteed to get at the very minimum the same amount or 1 extra bubble. So for skill level 2, you're going to get either 2 or 3, and this number is going to be completely random. Once you get to skill level 6, the maximum amount of bubbles you could get is going to be either 4 or 5. And one thing about these bubbles is that they're going to be either the bubbles that you can move around, or just special magic bubbles that have abilities in them. And these abilities could be the time bubble, the score bubble, the XP bubble. It could vary, or it could have just a regular bubble with nothing in it. So it's completely random. So for this portion of the video, I do want to show you a side-by-side comparison of skill level 1, 2, and 3. And again, for skill level 1, the difference here is that you're always going to get 2 bubbles. Skill level 2, you're going to get either 2 or 3. And finally, for skill level 3, you're guaranteed to get 3 bubbles. So again, these bubbles could be either the special magic bubbles, or it could be the flower petal bubble, which you could move around, by the way. If you didn't know, that pink flower bubble, you can move around. And then the regular bubbles are just regular, and you can't necessarily do anything about them. All right, so let's talk a little bit about strategy. So when you have these Tsums at these lower skill level, you should prioritize bursting bubbles in the center area. Especially the bubbles that you can't move around, try to pop those first, regardless if they have ability in them or not. The reason why you want to burst bubbles in the middle, especially like directly in the middle, that is the most optimal spot to burst bubbles. And the reason for that is because it's always going to be surrounded by Tsums. If you have a bubble that's at the very bottom of the screen or on the edge of the screens, it tends to burst less Tsums because there's a section of the bubble that's touching nothing and doesn't have Tsums, and it won't clear surrounding Tsums. So try to burst bubbles in the center area first, and then work your way up, and then finally at the very bottom. Sometimes they get set at the very bottom, then burst those last. And then for those special bubbles that are the flower ones where you can move around, try to move them to either the center area or to a region that has a lot of pink Charm Flower Auroras or the flower petals. The reason for that is you could get yourself back into ability time and activate more abilities back to back. But at these lower skill levels, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because you have very limited amount of bubbles you could work with. Per ability, the max you could get is 3 flower bubbles, which isn't a lot. And it could vary depending if you get 3 flower bubbles or if you get 3 regular bubbles. If you can't move them, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to maximize their potential because they're stationary. But if you get 3 flower bubbles, then you have more ability to move them around. And also those bursts are also bigger as well. They're all going to be standard, by the way, regardless of what skill level you have her at. The special flower bubble that you have, it's always going to be the same diameter. So that part doesn't change. It's really about just how many you get. So let me show you the ability side by side here, and I'm going to slow it down for you. So these ones aren't necessarily that comparable because it really depends on your luck essentially. But if you look at skill level 1, it's the easiest one to really focus on. I ended up getting one flower bubble and a regular bubble that doesn't have anything in it. So I ended up moving the bubble a little bit over to the right just to make sure that I'm able to capture surrounding Tsums, and then I burst the bubble. I think if I burst the regular bubble first, then it's going to create a hole which I need to wait maybe 1 or maybe half a second before moving that bubble back to the center area and burst it. So I will lose a little bit of time, which you'll see in the higher skill levels. It's a different type of gameplay. So let's get into it and take a look at skill level 4, 5, and 6 here. So for these higher skill level, the strategy does change a little bit because you get a little bit more bubbles here. For skill level 4, you're going to either get 3 or 4 bubbles on the screen. Skill level 5, you'll get 4 for sure. And then for skill level 6, you're either going to get 4 or 5. So because you will get extra bubbles on the screen, you're likely going to need to spend a little bit more time during the ability time and make sure that you're bursting these bubbles in the correct sequence and also placing them in the most optimal spot. So while you're playing this Tsum, it is going to require a little bit more focus. You can't necessarily just mindlessly play the Tsum because you will need to spend a little bit of time strategizing where you want to place the bubbles and which ones to burst first and so forth. So this isn't necessarily a mindless Tsum where you can just play while you're watching TV or maybe while you're eating. You will need to pay a little bit more attention to it. So overall, the strategy is relatively the same. Try to put the bubbles in the center area and burst them in the middle as much as possible, or move them to an area that has more Tsums if you can. But always try to burst bubbles in the middle if you can't move them, and then move the flower bubbles last. So for example, if you have 5 or 6 bubbles on the screen, prioritize bursting those that don't have the flower or you can't move them. Burst those first and then work on the flower ones, because the flower ones you can move around at any time, so you have more options there and you can strategically place them in the middle. So let me show you a side-by-side comparison of this ability activated at the same time and some good examples of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. So skill level 5 is the one where you shouldn't be doing, and skill level 4 and 6 are good examples of what you should be doing. So skill level 5, you'll notice that it looks like I panicked a little bit as well. I didn't really burst the regular bubbles first. I started mixing them and bursting flower ones first. And there's also not a rush too. If you don't have the screen set up, don't feel like you always have to move the flower bubbles right away. But just keep in mind, if you look at skill level 4, you see that bubble fell to the bottom. It will happen if you prioritize your flower bubbles first. And for skill level 5, you just saw there, a lot of my bubbles ended up at the very bottom, and I actually ended up bursting the flower bubble right away. But I noticed that my charger bar was getting full, so I knew that I was going to get back into ability time, which is why I didn't necessarily spend too much time trying to optimize that last flower bubble. So overall, I really do think that Charm Flower Aurora is a really fun Tsum to play with because there is a little bit of strategy to it, but it's also not difficult like Gaston or Jedi Luke or anything like that. It's not as easy as like a Charm Rugby Mickey either. I would say it's somewhere in between. And Charm Flower Aurora is actually really good for score, especially if you could get her to level 50. All of these examples that you're currently watching is my first attempts, so these results that you're going to see later are not necessarily the best representation of what you could get. I could assure you that a lot of people could get a higher score or higher coin count because you could practice with it. These were my first attempts. So let's actually take a look at that first and look at the results for these gameplays. So starting at skill level 1, I ended up with 1,795 coins with 5.3 million points. So it's very comparable to my results for skill level 2, because keep in mind, it kind of comes down to luck. For skill level 2, you're either going to get 2 or 3 bubbles. Likely in that gameplay, it wasn't the best results possible. Maybe I even messed up on bursting some of those bubbles. So it can happen where your results are not as good or stays the same. And for skill level 3 and 4, you'll see that the results resemble each other pretty closely as well. And then same for skill level 5 and 6. Of course, the higher skill level do perform a little bit better, except skill level 2. I don't exactly know what happened there. Maybe I just didn't optimize it, but those were my results. So as you can see here, for coin count, it's not that amazing. I would say you probably would just get her to skill level 4 and it's going to be sufficient. But if you want a high score, then you definitely need to get her to skill level 6. It's actually pretty good. At skill level 6, I ended up with 18.7 million points. And for coin count, I got 3.9 or 3,958 coins. So not too bad for coin count either. Of course, not amazing for coins, but it's okay. But if you need a high score earner, then Charm Flower Aurora is a good option because she's a Charm Tsum, relatively easy to use. And with some practice and also leveling her up to level 50, you're definitely going to get into the 20 millions. So that's my review for Charm Flower Aurora. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you haven't subscribed yet and you watched to the end of this video, please consider subscribing. And as always, thank you so much for watching.